My daughter called me at 2 in the morning, her voice soft and trembling. "Dad, please open the door. I'm so cold." That wouldn't be strange at all if Patty hadn't been dead for 4 years. I'm Ted Bennett, 58 years old, and I stood frozen in my home office, unable to speak. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Through the narrow gap in the door, I saw a shadow, small and hesitant, standing in the Oregon rain. I'd been up late anyway, spread construction blueprints across my desk, planning how to pass Bennett Construction down to the next generation. At 58, these midnight planning sessions had become routine since I lost my wife, Sue, 6 years ago. The company was worth $2.3 million now, built from nothing over 35 years of hard work. Every beam, every foundation, every project had my fingerprints on it. But Patty was gone, and I was running out of time to figure out who would carry on the family legacy. The old rotary phone on my office desk kept ringing, its shrill cry cutting through the silence of my house on Maple Street in Salem. Outside, rain tapped against the windows like it had that terrible night 4 years ago when everything changed. I reached for my reading glasses with shaking hands and lifted the receiver. "Hello?" For a moment there was only silence and the distant sound of rain, as if whoever was calling stood outside in the storm. Then came her voice, soft, fragile, unmistakably hers. "Dad, I'm so cold. Please let me in." My throat tightened. It sounded exactly like Patty, the same slight rasp at the end of her sentences, the same way she'd called me Dad instead of Daddy after she turned 15. As a construction engineer, I'd built my life on facts, measurements, solid evidence. But this defied everything I knew to be true. "Who is this?" I managed to whisper. "It's me, Dad." A pause, then quieter. "Remember when we built that treehouse? You said measure twice, cut once. That's still good advice." The room spun. That phrase. We'd worked on that treehouse together when she was 9, just the two of us with a pile of lumber and big dreams. It was our project, something I'd never told anyone about. Not even Sue knew how many weekends we'd spent in the backyard, me teaching Patty to use a level and read blueprints. I'd passed down everything I knew about building, about measuring angles and calculating load-bearing capacity. "This isn't funny," I said, my voice cracking. "My daughter died 4 years ago." "Dad," the voice said gently, "do you remember the day you taught me to drive your pickup truck in the company parking lot? You said construction sites were no place for someone who couldn't handle equipment." My knees buckled. I gripped the edge of the desk to steady myself. That Saturday morning lesson, her nervous laughter when she stalled the engine 3 times. I'd taught her to back up a trailer, to parallel park between concrete barriers. It was practical knowledge, father to daughter, the kind of memory tucked away with all the others. "Where are you?" I whispered. "Outside at the front door." "Please, Dad, I can't stay out here much longer." The line went dead. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, the receiver still pressed to my ear, listening to the dial tone. Then slowly I set it down and walked through the dark hallway toward the front door. The floorboards creaked under my weight, the same sounds I'd heard every night for 20 years. The house felt too big, too empty, just like it had every day since I'd buried my only child. I reached the door and peered through the peephole. There, standing under the porch light in the rain, was a figure. A woman. Her hair was dark and wet, clinging to her face. She wore a gray jacket, the same kind Patty used to wear when she helped me on job sites. She looked up right at the peephole, and for a split second I could have sworn it was her. My hand trembled as I turned the deadbolt and pulled the door open. Cold air rushed in. Rain misted my face, but there was no one there. Just the empty street, rustling tree branches, the faint glow of streetlights through the fog. I stepped onto the porch, my bare feet touching the cold wooden planks I'd installed myself 15 years ago. That's when I saw them. Small, wet footprints marked the porch floor. Bare footprints, as if someone had been standing there for a long time, shivering in the rain. As an engineer, I knew how to read evidence. These weren't random marks. The depth, the spacing, the way they faced the door, then turned toward the street. Someone had been here. Someone real, physical, with weight and presence. I knelt down and examined them closer, my engineering training kicking in automatically. Size 7, maybe 7.5. The same size Patty wore. Mourning didn't make things better. Gray light filtered through the curtains as I shuffled to the front door, joints aching from a sleepless night. I'd barely closed my eyes. Every creak sounded like footsteps, every wind gust like breathing. The footprints were still there, faint but visible in daylight, small barefoot impressions on the porch wood. I took photos with my phone, measured them with a ruler from my toolbox. In my 35 years of construction work, I'd learned to document everything. Evidence didn't lie. "Mr. Bennett!" I jerked up. My neighbor, Preston Williams, stood at the gate with his wife Barbara, both bundled in raincoats. "We saw your lights on at 2 a.m. Everything all right?" "Couldn't sleep," I said, slipping the ruler into my pocket. Barbara's eyes swept over me with the concern of someone who'd known our family for years. "You should see someone, dear. Grief does strange things to the mind." They meant well, but their word grief echoed in my head long after they left. By noon, I'd almost convinced myself it was a dream. Then, my son-in-law, Dr. Maxwell Kelman, showed up. His silver BMW purred into the driveway like expensive machinery, all polished surfaces and quiet power. He stepped out, immaculate in a pressed cream shirt, charcoal slacks, not a hair out of place. Even his cologne reached me first, something expensive and woodsy that seemed to announce his arrival. He knocked twice, then let himself in with the spare key I'd given him after Patty's funeral. "Ted." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "I was worried about you." Dr. Maxwell Kelman, clinical psychologist, director of Serenity Wellness Center, my daughter's widower, the man I'd once thought of as a son. At 45, he carried himself with the confidence of someone accustomed to being the smartest person in the room. "I'm fine," I said, instinctively moving to block his view of the ruler and photos on my kitchen counter. "Preston called me, said you looked unwell." He studied me like a patient, that professional gaze I'd seen him use on others. "Are you sleeping enough? Taking your medication?" "I don't need medication." His smile tightened just slightly. "You're 58, living alone. It's natural for the mind to play tricks, especially after traumatic loss." He moved closer. That cologne again, too strong for the small space. "If you need to talk, my door's open. We could do a session, off the record. I don't need therapy. Everyone needs someone to talk to, Ted, especially at your age. Grief can make us see things, hear things that aren't there. It's completely normal." His voice carried that smooth, professional tone I'd heard him use with his patients. The mind has ways of protecting itself from unbearable reality. Normal? As if last night could be normal. As if 35 years of reading blueprints and calculating structural integrity hadn't taught me the difference between imagination and physical evidence. "I'll think about it." His perfect smile returned. "Good. Oh, and Ted, have you given any more thought to the power of attorney we discussed? Managing Bennett Construction on your own, at your age with these episodes." He let the words hang like a structural beam waiting for support. "The business needs stable leadership. I only want to help. Family takes care of family." After he left, I stood at the window watching his BMW disappear down Maple Street. Something about how Max looked at me like I was a problem to solve rather than a person to help made my skin crawl. In my years managing construction crews, I'd learned to read people. Max was measuring me the same way I'd measure a building foundation, looking for weak points. That afternoon, I tried to distract myself by organizing Patty's room. I'd avoided it for months, but the mystery of last night demanded answers. Everything was exactly as she'd left it. The neatly made bed, books on the nightstand, a framed photo of her and Sue smiling from the dresser. It felt like entering a time capsule. I started with her desk, the same organized workspace where she'd done homework in high school. That's where I found it, tucked behind her old laptop like a blueprint hidden in a filing cabinet. A small manila envelope with my name written on the front in handwriting I knew instantly. Patty's. "Dad, don't be mad until you finish reading." My hands trembled as I opened it, the way they had 4 years ago when the police officer handed me her personal effects. The letter was dated 3 weeks before the accident. "Dad, I don't know who else to talk to. I'm scared you'll be angry, but I'm more scared to stay quiet. I think Max is stealing from me. He made me sign papers I didn't understand, said it was for tax purposes. But when I asked questions, he got angry, said I was paranoid, just like you, always looking for problems that weren't there. My chest tightened. I could hear her voice in every word. He controls everything now. Who I see, where I go. He checks my phone while I'm asleep. Says it's because he cares, but it feels like being trapped in a building with no exits. I wanted to leave him, but when I try to talk about it, he twists everything. Makes me feel crazy. Makes me doubt what I know to be true. I sat heavily in her desk chair, the same one where I'd helped her with math homework, where we'd gone over construction basics together. There's something else, Dad. The life insurance policy he had me sign, the one for $500,000. He said it was standard, but I looked it up. The beneficiary terms are strange. If something happens to me, he gets everything, including control of my share of Bennett Construction. The company you built, Dad, our legacy. The letter shook in my hands. If something happens to me, don't believe everything Max says, and don't sign anything. I'm going to find proof. I have to. I love you, Dad. Remember what you taught me about load-bearing walls? Some things hold the whole structure up, and if you remove them, everything collapses. The letter slipped from my fingers. I sat surrounded by her things, feeling the walls closing in. She had tried to warn me, and God help me, I'd told her to work it out, to give him a chance. I'd sent her back into that house, back to him. My phone buzzed against the kitchen counter, a text from my niece Rebecca. Uncle Ted, can you meet me at Luigi's? I need to talk to you about Patty's accident. It's important. Rebecca Bennett, 29, worked as an investigative journalist for the Salem Herald, sharp as a blueprint line and persistent as a foundation inspection. Just like her father, my brother Andrew. If anyone could help me make sense of this, it was Rebecca. An hour later, we sat in a corner booth at Luigi's, Rebecca typing notes into her phone before I'd even finished explaining about the phone call, the footprints, and the letter. She'd barely let me get through the details before she was already assembling pieces in her mind like a construction project coming together. Uncle Ted, she said, placing her phone on the table. I've been digging into Patty's accident for months. Something about it never sat right with me. I leaned forward, feeling the first spark of hope I'd had all day. What do you mean? 4 years ago, Patty died in a single car crash on Highway 18, Rebecca said, opening a folder on her phone. Rainy night. Her car went off the road and hit a tree. Police said it was an accident. Wet roads, maybe distraction. She angled the screen toward me. Photos, reports, details I'd spent years avoiding. Look here, she said, pointing to a line in the mechanic's report. The brake lines showed unusual wear. The inspector noted it, said it looked like deliberate scoring, not normal deterioration. As an engineer, I knew the difference between wear patterns and sabotage. Brake lines were like any other mechanical system, predictable in their failure modes. What Rebecca showed me wasn't predictable. The wear marks ran perpendicular to the normal stress lines, she continued, like someone used a file or knife edge to weaken specific points. I studied the photos with my engineer's eye. That's not accident damage, I said. That's systematic weakening. You'd need to know exactly where to score them for maximum failure under pressure. And this? Rebecca swiped to another document. The airbag didn't deploy. It should have, given the force of impact measured by the crash reconstruction team. But the system failed. Failed how? The diagnostic computer showed the airbag sensor had been disconnected and reconnected, like someone disabled it temporarily, then tried to cover their tracks. She pulled up technical diagrams. Uncle Ted, you understand electrical systems from construction work. Look at these connection points. I examined the wiring schematics. After 35 years of reading electrical blueprints, I could see the problem immediately. The ground wire was deliberately loosened, then retightened, I said. It would cause intermittent failure, especially under the stress of impact vibration. Exactly. Brake lines don't wear like that. Airbags don't randomly fail. Not on a car serviced 2 weeks before the crash. The room seemed to tilt. I think someone with mechanical knowledge wanted it to look like an accident. Someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Patty's letter echoed in my mind. If something happens to me, don't believe everything Max says. Max, I whispered. Rebecca held my gaze. Your son-in-law is smart, methodical. But Uncle Ted, there's more. I've been tracking his finances. 6 months before Patty died, he took out a $2 million malpractice insurance policy. said it was standard for his practice expansion. That's a lot of coverage for a small clinic. And 3 months after her death, he filed a claim against Bennett Construction for psychological damages related to workplace stress Patty supposedly experienced. He withdrew it when you didn't contest the life insurance payout. The truth hit like a sledgehammer to the chest. He's been planning this for months. The marriage, the insurance, getting me to sign him as backup executor. Classic long-term financial fraud targeting seniors, Rebecca said. But that letter Patty wrote, that's evidence of motive. If she planned to leave him or expose him, he had everything to lose. We need proof, I said, steadier. Now, something solid we can take to the police. I have an idea, Rebecca said, but it's risky. That night, Rebecca called her contact at Serenity Wellness Center. Nicholas Stone worked night security, a thin, nervous man in his 30s who owed Rebecca a favor from a gambling story she'd buried. At 11 p.m., we stood in the alley behind the clinic on West Holly Street. The building was dark except for emergency lighting. Rain soaked through my jacket, reminding me of too many late-night construction emergencies. Nick opened the side door, glancing around nervously. "You've got 20 minutes," he whispered. "Cameras are on a loop, but if anyone drives by, we're done." We slipped inside. The clinic was unsettlingly quiet at night, all polished surfaces and sanitized air. Our footsteps echoed as we climbed to the 3rd floor. Max's office sat at the end of the hall, sleek and modern, his name on a brass nameplate. Nick unlocked the door with a keycard. "I'll keep watch from the elevator. Move fast." Inside, the office smelled of leather and Max's woodsy cologne. Everything was immaculate. Organized files, spotless desk, framed diplomas arranged like a shrine to professional achievement. Rebecca headed straight for a locked door at the back. "Private office," she said, pulling lockpicks from her pocket. "Every therapist has one for sensitive files." The lock clicked open. The storage room was small, lined with filing cabinets and boxes labeled by year. On a desk in the corner sat a laptop connected to multiple external drives. "Jackpot," Rebecca said, powering it on. The screen filled with folders, dates, session codes, patient initials. She opened one labeled MF 2020-2024. Dozens of video files appeared, organized by date. She clicked the most recent. The footage showed Max's office from a hidden camera angle. Max sat calmly in his chair, pen in hand, the picture of professional competence. On the couch sat a young woman. My breath caught. She looked exactly like Patty. Same features, same posture, same mannerisms, but something was different in her voice, softer, more uncertain. "I don't belong in my family," she said. "I've felt it all my life, like I'm a guest. They love me, but I'm not really theirs." "Tell me more about that, Margaret," Max said, his voice clinical and controlled. "Margaret, not Patty. I know I was adopted. They told me when I was young, but the story doesn't add up. The hospital they said I was born in burned down years ago. When I asked questions, they changed the subject. Do you think they're hiding something? I think I was born somewhere without proper records, somewhere people could make things disappear." Her hands trembled slightly. "Dr. Kelman, you've been helping me understand that my father, my real father, abandoned me, that he chose to keep my sister and gave me away." Max wrote something down, expression unreadable. "And how does that make you feel about him?" "Angry, hurt, like I want him to know what it feels like to lose someone." The video ended. Rebecca and I stared at the screen in stunned silence. "She looks exactly like Patty," Rebecca whispered. "Not just similar, identical." My mind spun. Who is she? Rebecca was already copying files to a flash drive. Margaret Fletcher, born November 14th, 1993. "Uncle Ted, look at this." She opened another folder containing birth records, hospital documents, payment receipts, Crescent Bay Medical Center, Dr. Timothy Foster, private adoptions, baby trafficking. She scrolled through dozens of documents. "Uncle Ted, Patty had a twin sister, and Max has been using her to drive you insane. We need to get out of here," I said, but Rebecca was still copying files. "There's more. Financial records, insurance documents, a whole network." She ejected the drive. "Max has been planning this for years." We slipped out into the rainy night, but I couldn't shake one burning question. Where was Margaret Fletcher now? And what had Max convinced her to do next? The next morning I drove to Spokane to find Margaret's adoptive family. Rebecca had tracked down the Fletcher address from the files, a 4-hour drive east through Columbia River country. I needed to understand what Max had done to her, how deep his manipulation went. 412. Pine Grove Road was a modest one-story house with faded blue trim. Andrew Fletcher, maybe 60, was splitting firewood in the front yard when I pulled up. "Mr. Fletcher, I'm Ted Bennett. I need to talk to you about your daughter Margaret." His face went pale. He set down the axe and called inside. "Jen, someone's here about Maggie." An older woman appeared, her eyes immediately fearful. "What about Maggie?" 20 minutes later, we sat around their small kitchen table. Jennifer made coffee with trembling hands while Andrew explained their story. "We adopted Maggie in 1993, he said quietly. "We couldn't have children. A doctor, Dr. Timothy Foster, arranged it. Said it was private, no paperwork. We paid $12,800. We loved her," Jennifer added, wiping tears. "But Maggie always felt different. She'd say she didn't belong, that she didn't look like us, no matter how much we reassured her." "Where is she now?" I asked. Andrew's expression darkened. "She moved to Salem 2 years ago after meeting some therapist online. Dr. Maxwell Kellman. Said he specialized in adoption trauma, offered her free sessions to find her real family." My stomach dropped. "Has she been in contact with you?" "Less and less," Jennifer said. "At first she called every week, excited about her therapy progress. Then the calls got darker. She said Dr. Kellman was helping her understand that her biological father had abandoned her, chosen to keep her twin sister, and threw her away like garbage. The manipulation was even deeper than I'd imagined. Max had spent 2 years systematically poisoning Margaret against me, using her adoption trauma as a weapon. "Mr. Fletcher, Margaret is my daughter. I never knew she existed. Someone stole her from the hospital when she was born." They sat in stunned silence. Finally, Andrew spoke. "She's been so angry, so full of hate for this father who abandoned her. If what you're saying is true..." My phone rang. Unknown number. "Mr. Bennett?" A woman's voice, scared and breathless. "This is Margaret Fletcher. Dr. Kellman just tried to... He had a syringe. I got away, but he's coming for you. He said you found out too much." "Where are you?" "Hiding in the parking garage at First National Bank downtown Salem. He's completely lost it. He said something about ending this tonight, that you and I both know too much to live. Stay there. I'm coming." I raced back to Salem, calling Rebecca on the way. She met me at the bank with police backup, but when we arrived, Margaret was gone. A security guard said a well-dressed man in a BMW had convinced a young woman to leave with him for her safety. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Your house. 1 hour. Come alone or she dies." I drove to Maple Street with my heart hammering. Max's BMW was parked in my driveway. I found them in my living room. Margaret sat on my couch, pale and shaking. Max stood behind her, one hand on her shoulder, the other holding a syringe. "Ted," he said, his perfect composure finally cracking. "I tried to do this the clean way. It's over, Max. We have everything. The files, the videos, the evidence of what you did to Patty." He laughed, bitter and cold. "You have nothing. Who's going to believe a grieving widower and his conspiracy theories? I'm a respected doctor. You're a construction worker having hallucinations. The police are already on their way," I lied. "No," Max said, tightening his grip on the syringe. "They're not." That's when Margaret looked up at me for the first time, really looked. I saw recognition dawn in her eyes, the same green eyes Patty had, the same eyes I saw in the mirror every morning. "You look like her," she whispered. "In the photos he showed me, my twin sister. You have the same eyes." "Margaret," I said gently, "I'm not the father who abandoned you. I'm the father who never knew you existed. Someone stole you from the hospital when you were born. I would have loved you. I would have given anything to have both my daughters." Tears started falling down her cheeks. "But Dr. Kellman said..." "He showed me records, documents." "He showed you lies," I said. "I built a treehouse for Patty when she was 9. If I'd known about you, I would have built you one too. I would have taught you to read blueprints, to use a level, to measure twice and cut once." "You're lying," Max snapped, but I could see uncertainty creeping into Margaret's expression. He made me call you, she said, her voice breaking. Made me pretend to be her ghost. He said it was therapy, that making you confront your guilt would help both of us heal, but every time I did it, I felt sick inside. Because you knew it was wrong, I said. Because you're not a manipulator like him. You're my daughter. Max raised the syringe. Enough. Margaret suddenly stood up and faced him. No, I'm done being your puppet. She grabbed the heavy bookend from my coffee table and swung. It connected with Max's wrist. The syringe flew across the room and shattered against the wall. Seconds later, the front door burst open. Police flooded in, weapons drawn. Behind them stood Rebecca, holding up her phone. I called them when I heard the confession, she said. They heard everything. 8 months later, Dr. Maxwell Kellman was sentenced to 25 years for manslaughter, conspiracy, and federal fraud charges. The investigation uncovered a baby trafficking network spanning 3 decades, with dozens of families affected. Margaret and I started slowly. Coffee first, then dinners. She told me about her childhood in Spokane, the constant feeling of not belonging. I told her about Patty, about the sister she never knew, about all the years we'd lost. One afternoon, we went to Riverview Cemetery together. We stood before Patty's grave as light rain fell around us. I wish I'd known her, Margaret whispered. She would have loved you, I said. You're exactly like her. Stubborn, brave, too smart for your own good. Margaret moved into Patty's old room a month later, not as a replacement, but as herself. We were learning each other, building something new from the wreckage Max left behind. I'm teaching her the construction business now. Bennett Construction will have someone to carry it forward after all. Rebecca stops by every Sunday for dinner, and slowly, we're becoming the family we should have been all along. At 2 a.m. now, my house is quiet. No mysterious phone calls, no shadows on the porch, just family, finally whole again. Looking back, I realize how close I came to losing everything. Not just to Max's manipulation, but to my own doubt and isolation. If there's one lesson from this story, it's this. Trust your instincts. When something feels wrong, it probably is. Don't let anyone convince you that your reality isn't real. These are the stories that need to be told. Real warnings from someone who lived through darkness and found light.